Hey everyone, welcome to Word Made Digital. I'm your host, Joanna LaFleur, and on today's episode, we have a guy who is known for what he does on Instagram and Instagram stories specifically. His name is Jesse Driftwood, and actually that's not his real name, but that's what he goes by online, and actually his real name is Dutch, so as a Dutch person myself, I know we're going to get along just great. So Jesse does over-the-top Instagram stories. We're talking high-quality audio, visual effects, the whole thing, like cinematic stories on Instagram. But the thing about Instagram stories is that they disappear after 24 hours. And so he does all this work for just 24 hours of people having a chance to see it. And so through what he's doing, he's grown a channel to over 100,000 people are watching now his Instagram stories. And we want to talk to him about that. Why did he start that? Why is he doing this creative work online that's just going to disappear so fast? And what's he going to do after he's built all of this when or if Instagram goes away or people start going onto a different social media account? How is he going to kind of pivot with them? And what does he do with storytelling? And what does he learn about storytelling through the medium of Instagram? So I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. You're going to love getting to know him and his creative heart, his creative passion online and through video. He's an amazing videographer as well. So, hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. This week I had the fun of hearing from somebody who's listening to us from Switzerland, and he's just encouraged about what's going on with arts and creative communication on this podcast, and he's sharing it with his friends in the European church. I love that. I'd love to know, where are you listening to Word Made Digital from? I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, and thanks so much for listening. Now here's my conversation with Jesse Driftwood.
You're listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur, where we discuss all things creative and communications for the church. The church carries the best news in the world, so we want to help you be the best creatives and communicators in the world. Let's go.
Well, Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you
I am so glad to have you. We have been internet friends for a little while, and so it's nice to be real life friends. I mean, if I should be so bold, now we're friends.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm sitting in your studio.
This is the space. It's okay.
Yeah, it's I gotta say, no one else will see it in the theater of the mind. This is smaller than I thought it would be when I've seen it on Instagram.
It's because everything I shoot is super, super wide, and so people think this is some massive space.
I thought the ceiling was higher, especially because you fly drones in here.
Yeah, that's just ill-advised.
I thought it would be a bit bigger, but it's enough space for what you do.
Oh, so. Yeah, it's great. I mean, low-key, I am on the hunt for something much bigger.
Okay.
But that's long-term vision. That's shared studio space, lots of people.
So now we've already started talking.
Yeah, I know.
Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Yes, my name, as formerly known on the internet, is Jesse Driftwood. It's not my real last name. It's just I ran a business for like 8+ years called Driftwood, and so it kind of just grew from there.
Okay.
I'm a filmmaker. I'm a photographer. I spent most of my life doing wedding films, commercial films, corporate films, that kind of thing. But as work expanded, it meant I was no longer creating any content for myself. I wasn't making any video for the fun of it. And so I started making social content stuff on Instagram, that kind of thing, YouTube, some family vlogs, that stuff, just as a reason to be like, I actually like this. I should do it for fun.
Right. Like not just for pay.
Yes,
do it
not for pay.
Yeah.
It started as fun, and then I was like, wow, I can make a job out of this. And then the job got so big that I couldn't have the fun with it anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted a reason to just do things for fun and not care about it. Part of that was actually with Kevin Makins, who you've had on the show in the past.
That is
or in
true.
the future, depending on how these are laid out. We started making YouTube videos together for a channel of his, and I just really loved doing that. And so, in that process, I started making more stuff for myself and caring less about it, trying to turn things out quickly, and that was really well received by an audience. And so now it's grown so that the things I make for fun are now the things I make for business, but it's simultaneous, business and pleasure.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I want to dive into that in a couple minutes about like why you started it, and now does it still sort of sit in that same place in your heart, because it has grown because it was great. So you make every day or every couple days.
Yeah.
You're making Instagram stories.
Yeah, so as many days as possible. It was daily for a really long time, but then daily started becoming less fun because it started being more about the pressure of doing it, which I think is good for a season of time. But I kind of wanted to take a step back, slow down a little bit, and think about bigger picture. What do I want to make? This started as a way for just me to have fun.
Yeah.
And if it's not that anymore, then what should I do? And it is still that. It is very much fun for me, especially now that I'm more like every other day or 2 out of 3 days, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and the nature of Instagram story is that once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
But that means there are all kinds of people who haven't seen your content from a year ago.
I know.
So you can kind of recycle.
I can a little bit.
on your off days.
I do occasionally. I try not too much, because even when I put like a thing on it that says like, this is a story from 1 year ago exactly, I get messages be like, hey, I've seen that before. I'm like, yeah, I know. I told you that. I'm the one who told you that.
Oh man.
So I don't want to do it all the time. I also don't want to lean on that as an option. I like that I can do it, but I don't want it to become a default where I'm just not creating new things anymore, because I like creating new things, and I like the pressure that disappearing video gives me, which is
talk about that. What happens creatively, like in the vortex of 24 hours later it's gone?
Well, even especially when I was doing daily, there was always the pressure of, I know right now exactly, I think I'm 16 hours in since my last story was posted. So theoretically, I've got about 8 hours to shoot, edit, and upload something new. And that pressure, it still is good for me, but it was really good for me for a while, because it meant that I had to do something and I couldn't give some sort of excuse. And my worry with jumping into starting with YouTube stuff was I was so busy with my commercial and like corporate work still that I didn't really have time to make the YouTube content that I wanted. But also with YouTube videos, it's like, well, I can post one and then sit on it for a little bit, and I'll post the next one whenever.
Yeah.
But if I want people to see the things I'm making, I kind of have to make them really frequently.
Right.
It still stresses me out a little bit when I don't have a story on my page.
I know, I think it's got to be stressful.
Yeah, for sure. The highlights feature on Instagram, if you guys listening know what that is, I hope you do, I don't know, was a game changer for me.
Okay.
Because it meant that if someone new is visiting my page for the first time, and I happen to have either not made stories that day or made something I'm not particularly proud of, at least there's a bit of a reel of things that I like.
Right, because you're only as good as your best work when it disappears after 24 hours.
So that gave me a reason to be like, or it gave me permission to take a day off.
Right.
Because at the very least, if someone comes to my page for the first time, there's something that's representative of what I do typically do.
Yeah.
But now there's not that same pressure to...
Yeah. And I think the reason that you have gained an audience is because they have an expectation of consistency. So I don't actually know how many people right now, today, how many people are following your Instagram, these stories every day?
98,000 as of today.
98,000 people from probably all over the world.
Yeah, all over the world. The U.S. is the biggest demographic. I think Canada's only third.
Yeah.
So.
And how did this happen? Like, I mean, you're creating content, but how did people find you? What's the story?
I mean, the biggest push was my good friend Peter McKinnon. He had an explosive year on YouTube. He's in like 18 months, like 2.2 million subscribers.
Wow. Is he at 2.2 million?
He'll hit 2.2 like any day now.
Wow.
He's at 2.1 million.
Wow.
Over 2 million, which is...
Millions of people follow him.
Yeah, millions. So in the early days, he was sitting around like 3, maybe 400,000, which is still a huge number. I did a video on his channel talking about these Instagram stories. So him and I have known each other for years. We've worked together a bunch in the past. He saw that I was making these Instagram stories, and he was like...
And you were doing this separate from him.
Yeah.
You didn't do it for him. You'd already started.
No, I was just... Yeah. I had just done some, self-reflection, and I realized that one of the things I wanted to prioritize was my own creativity, because I was burning out on weddings, I was burning out on corporate work. I felt like I didn't have creative control, and while I was thinking about what do I prioritize in life, I realized that my own personal creativity is something that I really value, but I hadn't been prioritizing.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to start making things, putting out there. And I loved Instagram stories as soon as it came out because you didn't have to really care because it was going to disappear. So at first I just liked making jokes on it, like zooming in on strangers or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, like what most people do.
Totally.
They're not as thoughtful about it. But you don't have to be.
You didn't have to be. So you can post anything. And then I remember the first quote-unquote story that I ever quote-unquote edited was just a slow-motion shot of me taking a bite of a donut. And I just pulled out a camera, I had a donut, shot it vertically, brought it into my computer, edited it really quickly, and uploaded it. And the reason I did it was I thought it was funny. Because at first I was like, Instagram stories is really funny, you can do anything. And then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if I made this way too much work, and then upload it and still let it disappear. And the more I let myself do that, like shoot, edit, upload, the funnier I thought it was. And every time I was like, how can I make this more ridiculous? And it was like, there was time lapses and I was masking myself and all that stuff. And I just thought it was funny. And I finally had found an outlet for my own creative satisfaction.
Right.
At that point, there were not many people watching them. It was mostly friends and family. But it was also, funny enough, it was the first time my Instagram had shown any growth in years. So there's that, I guess. And my friend Pete, he reached out to me and he said, I think this is a really cool idea. No one else is doing it. I haven't seen this anywhere. And I think my audience would really benefit from everything that I had talked to him about, which is that it was an outlet for me to find creative satisfaction, to not care so much about the quality of what I was creating.
That was a create edit. Creating. I'm creating today.
Yeah, I'm not going to coin that word. So we did that, and I think my page grew like 20,000 followers.
Now,
very quickly.
But isn't that an interesting tell? I want to talk to you about that because you 20 grand. It's this Freudian slip because with followers comes the potential to make money.
Yeah.
And it becomes what was your hobby, your personal Instagram page, maybe to sort of showcase some of your photography, has now become a business revenue source for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk about that. Like how has this happened? What do you? It's a total shift.
Yes. And what's interesting about it is now, while I do the occasional branded content, that stuff directly pays me. I also know that my rates are based on my page size, the average views, all that kind of like engagement metrics. And so even the things I'm just making for fun, in the back of my head, I know these are the things that help me grow, and the things that help me grow are the things that help me raise my prices, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So even when it's not a work video, it's not a branded piece.
You're not doing like an Adidas commercial.
Yeah, it's still in the back of my head that the better I make this video, the more likely it will be that I can turn this into my full-time job. I won't have to book any more jobs that I don't find creatively fulfilling. I won't have to do weddings anymore if I don't want to book them.
Yeah.
So now even the things that aren't work are still kind of work.
Yeah.
But not in the same way. I haven't burnt out on this. I still have so much fun. I still think Instagram stories are really funny. I still like to, in some sense, add elements of comedy into my videos. Not because
you do.
I'm not because I think I'm particularly funny, but it's just the content I enjoy watching.
Yeah.
So I'm just making things that I would want other people to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and how does, you have a wife?
Yep.
You have a little girl.
Yep.
And I believe you're having another kid.
Yep, another kid in October.
So how has this affected family life?
So much.
Let's talk about that.
It is very interesting.
Because you have chosen to show I know you have a wife, child, and baby on the way, because you've chosen to put them on your stories.
For sure.
For what is it,
98,000.
98 for 100,000 people to watch.
Soon. Maybe by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
It's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. and I haven't even settled on an exact answer just yet.
Sure, it's a feel thing, like
Very much so.
like season by season, you got to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pigeonhole myself into like I'm a family vlogger, that kind of thing, because the day might come where my daughter says like, I don't want you to film.
Yeah.
And I'll have to say, yeah, I respect that. That's fine. You know, you are your own self. But for a while, it's like, you're a baby. You don't need to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, humble brag. I have had a lot of people tell me that I'm good at not making the whole interaction just about the video I'm making and not making it feel like I always have a camera, that kind of thing. So because of my years of wedding filmmaking, commercial filming, that kind of stuff, I know what shots I need to put a story together. So, you know, there's a story that I put up the other night of Dorothy like jumping off of the couch. And I wasn't even planning on making a video about this. We were just playing, set up the couch into a fort that she could jump onto pillows from. And I just thought, like, this is really great, and I'm going to want to remember this. So I should film a little bit of it. And so there's, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 different shots in that video. But I knew going into it, here are the shots that I need to tell this story. And the whole fort was already set up, so there's a funny story about the edit where I actually set the fort up. I'll tell you that in a second. But I was just like, you know what? She's having a blast, climbing the couch, jumping off. Over and over and over and over. So I'm just going to film it a couple times really quickly, and then I don't need the camera after that. Because I know that's all I need. I don't need to, you know, make it all about the camera.
You're not doing like a 2-hour shoot with the toddler.
No, it's just, I can be very efficient because I know what shots that I need and how I can compile that into a story. I put her to bed after that, and I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? It'd be nice if I had an intro to this story, because stories need introductions.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I guess I should build the fort. And I was like, well, I got to go downstairs, I got to clean it all up, and then I have to film myself set it all up, and then I have to clean it all up again.
Yeah.
And as I started cleaning it up, I was like, nah, I'm just going to film myself clean it up and make all the footage in reverse. It just seemed easier. And while a lot of people are like, wow, what a cool idea, I was like, I was being lazy.
Yeah, but I mean, it's making it work in the time and capacity you have in family life.
And the interesting thing is, that's what wedding shooting in particular has taught me more than anything else, is problem solving, working quickly, working with what I have.
Yeah.
All those skills that you don't really learn in a lot of other filmmaking worlds, because a lot of other worlds, it's you write down, this is what I'm going to do, these are the shots we need, and then you go get them. Whereas wedding filmmaking is a lot more like documentary filmmaking.
Right.
Where it's
run and gun.
Run and gun, you're watching what's happening, trying to figure out, you know, the action, and you have to figure out what handful of shots can I get to put this together into their wedding film after. And so those skills translated over to Instagram stories really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And your wife, I mean, because as you said, your daughter is young enough that she maybe doesn't have a full concept, and so you're making thoughtful decisions as a parent about when to do that.
There are things that I
do
choose
people
not
recognize you guys on the street? Like, is your wife feeling like she's losing her privacy?
What's funny is I think Dorothy gets recognized more than Emma does.
You know what, that could be, actually.
But it's not.
I mean, she's adorable.
Yeah, and she's not. My wife isn't in it probably as much as Dorothy is, because usually if the three of us are together, it's just the three of us are together.
Yeah.
Usually the ones that are with my daughter, because the two of us are doing something fun, and I just think I'm going to want to remember this, I should get a couple clips.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could edit this really quickly. It's a 15-second video.
Yeah.
How much footage do you really need? And you shoot in slow motion, you film for 3 seconds, and you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Well, my favorite videos of your daughter are like, she has these great little quotes.
Yeah, I know.
Or like, I mean, even I just saw something the other day where, I mean, it was just more sweet. She said like, I love playing with you, Daddy, or something. And I'm like, melt my heart. It's just, I'm sure that's just, you know, you caught it in the moment sort of a thing.
And that's so lucky. Yeah. That story in particular, we were going to go and play on the front porch, and she's very slow to put her shoes on, and so I just sat the camera down on the ground. She wants to put them on herself too.
Yeah. How old is she?
She'll be 3 in like a month.
Okay. Yeah.
So she's not yet 3. I just put the camera on the ground. I let it roll, and that's just who she is. You know, I'm not prying her to be like, say a cute thing.
Say it again.
Tell me you love me. Say it for the camera.
Which I'm sure some people do, right?
I'm sure it happens. But
where you know some people who film their kids, and it depends on the kids. Some have like a negative response to constantly have, and it's thoughtful. And I know, of course, there are lots of people who have large followings that intentionally decide not. Like your friend Peter.
Peter, yeah, he intentionally doesn't show his daughter.
Yeah.
Or his wife, really. I think she's been in it maybe once, maybe twice. But that was a time where they decided beforehand. It's not like, here's the camera.
Yeah, they have their own life as a family separate.
Yeah.
And I would imagine with him, if you're at 100,000, he's at 2 million plus people. There's a safety factor that starts to be a question for your family at that level of followers. I know a mutual friend of ours, Maddie, who's on this podcast as well, has shared some stories of just sort of some people who overstep. I won't say too much about that.
Yeah, of course.
But overstep boundaries of, wow, we aren't friends and we don't know each other and this is a bit much.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So these are things that I am thinking about constantly.
Yeah.
And it's the reason that I don't make my videos too specifically into a genre, because I want the freedom to change. I want to be able to have my style grow as my tastes grow, because like I said, I'm mostly just making things that I like. Yeah. And if my tastes change, then so will my content. And I don't want people to get the expectation that, oh, you're a family filmmaker, you're a family vlogger, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because if
you're a skateboard videographer, or I don't know. It's all every day is.
If one day I decide, or Dorothy decides, that this isn't a thing we want to share, or maybe my page grows to a certain size and I just don't feel comfortable because privacy, safety, those kind of things.
You don't want people to know where you live and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want people showing up at my house, that kind of thing.
Which happens, though. Like, maybe, I don't know if it's happened to you, but it happens to people.
No, it hasn't happened to me, but I know, like, some friends that it has happened to. And the unfortunate thing is, when it happens to them, they have to be very stern and be like, this is not okay. Yeah. And, And there's
a feeling like I feel like you don't know me, but I do feel like I know you.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And we were internet friends. I mean, I know you on the internet. I don't expect you to follow me very closely. I love your stories. But there's this like, I know about your family a bit because I've seen them, but I've never met your wife.
Yeah, and a lot of people just don't fully understand those boundaries and that dynamic. And they might just feel like, I do know you really well. Yeah. And not think about the, but you don't know me at all part. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about it a lot. It might change.
Yeah. And it's this world of social media where we get to choose what we put out.
Yes.
Whether that's personal or professional. Like, we're deciding what story we want to tell. And it's a curated story, no matter what it is. It's and we have to be thoughtful of the consequences of what we decide we want to tell a story about.
For sure. I think a lot of the criticism that people have with social media being curated is that they think it gives a false version of yourself. To an extent, that's true, but we do that constantly. I thought about what clothes I was going to wear today. I curated my outfit, so
this is my curated outfit.
Yeah, it's a dirty white T-shirt and the shorts I've been wearing for 3 days. But I changed my Apple Watch band based on what I'm wearing. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, but I know what you're saying.
We're always trying to present a version of ourselves. Right. And there's not really a way around that in particular, but I think it's still healthy to be conscious of it. Yeah. So that you're at the very least curating a version of yourself that is real. Right. Right. I'm not showing Instagram stories of my daughter having tantrums. She's a toddler. Of course she has tantrums. But when she does, I'm not filming. I'm not going to try to exploit that. Yeah. And I do that not because I want people to think we have this perfect family life, or because I feel better if people assume my daughter never cries. Yeah. It's just like, no, I don't want to film that. Yeah. So what? Yeah.
Well, and I have a mantra that I use with my team. I've talked about this on another podcast that I've done in this series. And one of the things is that we always say we tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, like, in church world that I work in, there's nothing worse than... you've seen a church or you've seen an organization. It doesn't matter if it's a church. It could be anything. You've seen a hamburger on the internet and it looks like the best hamburger ever. And then you go to the shop that sells the hamburgers and the real one you get does not look like the one in the picture. Because of what they've done in a studio to stylize it. Or in a church, it's stuff like, this looks like a church that's got 1,000 people in it, right. and it doesn't matter that it doesn't, but you expected when you showed up to be 1,000 people and you realize there's only... 50 or 100 people, and because of what they chose with the camera angles of how to tell the story, that isn't, and so it's not that they were lying when they took the photo, but they're curating it in such a way that it maybe doesn't give an accurate picture, and some things have more of a luxury of deciding, well, it doesn't matter if it's accurate, it's just a story. But with things in the world of church or Christianity or something where integrity matters, trust building matters with your congregation, your potential constituents in the community, being thoughtful about what we are curating and what kind of story. You know, I mean, you don't want to curate the story of your child is a terror. No, like that would be the wrong story. If you only showed stories of tantrums, that would curate the wrong. Those things are true that she did that in that moment, but that isn't really her as a whole picture.
Absolutely. I mean, a level of self-awareness is very, very, very important. Especially when curating. Because I'm not trying to build a false narrative of what my life is. Right? All these moments I'm sharing, that is actual reality. You know, I'm not forcing her to do anything. It's just, I'm letting it unfold. And what's interesting is it's another thing that I learned from wedding filmmaking is my goal isn't necessarily to make something that their wedding wasn't, but it's to make something that feels exactly the way the wedding felt. And sometimes if you just watch a video camera, for example, filming a wedding, and you watch that after, it's not going to feel the way the wedding actually felt, because all the emotions don't come through the same way. So when I make a wedding film, as an example, while some people a cynic might say it's a bit of like emotional manipulation, I'm sure you can do that. I think there's an element in which it's just not true, because for the people that were there, this is exactly how it felt. Right? And so the goal is... And
you're not going to watch you're not going to watch 8 hours.
No,
you need this in a 3 to 5 minute video or whatever.
So my goal is to curate an emotional experience that matches that of the actual event. And so some weddings are very emotional, and so that might be the case. Some are really fun, and that that might be the case. And so when I'm making videos with my daughter, the stuff that I show is how I remember it. Of course, she has like tantrums and stuff, but when I think back, it's like, for parents, you'll probably understand this. A lot of the day, you might be like, I can't wait till you're asleep so I can, have a bit of relaxation. Then they go to sleep, and you're like, I wish they were awake. I just want to play with them. In the moments after, you remember. Hopefully, this is the case if you're a parent. You remember all the good stuff. And it's like all the bad stuff doesn't matter. When you watch your child sleep, all you remember is the fun things that you do with them and the cute things they say. And if not, I mean, there's probably something you need to work on there. If they go to sleep and you see them peaceful and you're like, you little terror.
That's your own thing that you got to work out.
So I'm trying to curate the memories, but I'm just trying to make a physical version of the way I actually feel and remember these moments with them.
So, you work a lot. I mean, you're talking about this Instagram stuff. You're doing this. The nature of it is it disappears after 24 hours. So it can become or is a daily thought for you. You have wedding stuff. You do corporate stuff. Whatever you do. And talk to me about that in relation to a life of faith, where there are sort of structures in a Christian faith about rest, a day off. That's what I'm going at. Like, talk to me about what it looks like for you. And I don't, maybe you haven't figured it out yet, but how do you find rest in, like, how do you do that in a healthy way in the tyranny of constant video?
I'm very much trying to figure that out. There are times when I'm great at it. They're not often those times. I think there's a really unhealthy hustle culture that exists, but there's also a really unhealthy lazy culture that exists.
The pendulum swings both ways.
Very much so. And so I know for myself, I'm more likely to swing in that direction.
Sorry, which direction?
In the not work.
Oh, okay.
And so I actually try and push myself the other way, and then I'll usually get called out by my wife that I'm going too far.
Too much work.
I was just, before we were recording, I was mentioning I was working here till like 2:30 the other night, which is not a sustainable practice if you have a family.
Right.
So,
figuring it out.
But we're very much figuring it out all the time, and it is very much a pendulum all the time. I do very much need to get into a rhythm of these are my work times and these are my not work times. Particularly, I talk with Kevin and Meg a lot about like how bad I need an actual Sabbath, a day where people know that I am not available.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Or I do it. Oh, this was so sad. Actually, my wife and I, this is about a year ago, we put it in the calendar. It was like Thursdays, let's say, as an example. This is my Sabbath. This is the day that I don't work. I don't film things. I don't edit things. Total day off. People know that. So we set it up, reoccurring date in the calendar. And then there was something I had to shoot that day. And then the next week, and over time, I wasn't prioritizing it anymore. And she said that the day she deleted it from our calendar, she just felt like we lost.
Oh, like, where's the emoji? Like the downcast face emoji.
It's so sad.
Oh, yeah. But that's real, right? Like, I think that we see that in the Bible and we see that in real life today in 2018. If there's nothing new under the sun, it's that people can't figure out how to take a day off because we're a slave to our work sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so I'm thinking of people who are listening and dream of being those creatives who are going to go work for themselves. Yeah. And I can choose my own schedule and be my own boss. But I think in some ways maybe you'd have some insight into this. Now you have like a lot more bosses actually.
Yeah, for sure.
You have more demands on your time, or because the person you're doing a wedding for, they don't care that you did another wedding the week after. They just want their work done. And now you have a boss there and a boss here, and all these people are expecting this from you.
And Instagram people are expecting me to make more things. And I have family, not just my wife and child, extended family that are expecting a certain level of. And I don't resent anyone for those things, but it does very much feel like there are a lot more bosses, a lot more people wanting things from my time. And the bigger this Instagram thing gets, the more my wife and I talk and have to figure out how to manage that time, and so that there is a time where I'm not working. Yeah. A Sabbath is the answer. I know that it is the answer that I need. Yeah. And I'm not there right
it's not I mean, and I'm not here to tell you what to do, but just this weekend we had a conversation, a sermon at my own church about Sabbath, and I was listening to the podcast of it, and I loved the analogy that the preacher, we had this guest preacher guy, and he talked about a coral reef that sustains life for millions of organisms. How it starts as just this tiny little thing, like tiny little cluster of, I don't know, coral. I don't know biology. I don't know marine biology, but whatever. It starts small and it grows big, and then the bigger it gets, the more life it can sustain. Right. And he was sort of using this as an encouragement for us with Sabbath, that it's not like from 0 to 100. It's like, what does it look like to take, these are 3 hours. I'm putting my phone away. I'm putting my camera. I don't know. Whatever work looks like to us, it looks different. Those things that are work are putting aside, and it's I'm gonna, I don't know, go walk in nature, or I'm gonna get out my canvas and paint a picture because that gives me life. I don't know. And the idea of like, we feel like it has to be 0 to 100, and then we give up, and then or like the thing comes up on the Thursday that you have to shoot, and then you just start to feel defeated over and over because it takes time to build the whole life ecosystem.
What's interesting for me is that I do have the benefit of usually choosing my own schedule. There are things like shoots and all that I
and more travel you're doing now.
But so scheduling just a day is hard, but what's interesting is that it's really easy for me at the very least to schedule some hours. Right. So my wife will actually work morning shifts sometimes. So I'm home with Dorothy until 11 a.m. or something like that in the morning. So my day isn't, or my life isn't so much broken up into individual days so much as like blocks in each day. Yeah. So while I'll go months at a time where there isn't a day I don't work, it's very rare for me to go many days at all in which there isn't a block within the day that I don't work at all.
Where you're thoughtful about trying to build rest into your rhythms and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And it's mostly because my wife is the best and she reminds me how much I need these things, and that it's not normal to work like 17-hour days. Yeah. I mean, and when you're passionate about what you do and it's creative work and it's sparking, you're sitting wherever you're sitting and you're thinking of something, or you just want to pull out the camera, and where's the line between this was what I did to enjoy my creative work, now it's become work. So Instagram is a platform for you that has
expanded your reach, expanded your world.
Yeah, exponentially.
I guess it's the question I want to bring to you is sort of like what happens, not if but when it goes away. Like what do you like? You mean because Instagram story it works now. Who knows 5 years from now what the world will want to watch and where they want to watch it.
For sure, there's a few things. So this is also something I've thought quite a lot about, because Instagram stories for me was never about building an audience so much about building my own skill set and my own creative enjoyment. One of the things that I've thought about a lot is that the orientation of a cell phone is not going away. Vertical screens are very, very common. And so I have a history of filmmaking, but no history of vertical filmmaking. I know that brands need vertical ad content, and they need to understand that. So I've always thought, worst case scenario, I'm going to get really good at telling stories in this uncomfortable aspect ratio, because there will always, or at the very least for the foreseeable future, that's how people
it's a
are
transferable
content.
skill.
It's very much a transferable skill.
Yeah.
So networking and building my own skills as a vertical filmmaker and as someone who can tell stories really quickly and efficiently, because people have short attention spans, and if you want to tell a story, you know, brands only have so much time before that skip ad button shows up on YouTube or whatever. I want to get really good at that. So that in the future, if Instagram goes away or whatever, I still have built a skill set that is desirable to someone.
That makes sense. And in the world of Instagram, like, what are you excited about? Maybe what are you seeing other people do? Or just like Peter was excited about what he saw you doing and wanted to tell his you know, his followers, however many there were at the time. What are you seeing? What are you excited about?
I've met so many new people just because of online world. And what I find fascinating actually is that, you know, I've met a handful of people that are making content on Instagram stories that's nothing like mine. That I love so much. And so building relationships with those people has been great. Getting to meet up with people has been great. Particularly when it's people that are doing things that I'm not doing, or doing things that are better than I am. You know, people that do kind of visual effects and that kind of work, I think is amazing. Just like... I just always want to be surprised. I love a good surprise. You know, when I first found out my friend Ruben, when we first met, he had just recently come back from a year-long bike trip with his wife and 2-year-old, or 3-year-old and 5-year-old at the time.
Bike, you mean like bicycles?
Bicycle, yeah. They lived on their bikes for a year.
Wow.
And I first heard that, I was like, that's amazing! Because I never would have guessed that, right? So anybody that makes me feel like, wait, you did what? And maybe that's why I thought it was funny to edit these over-the-top Instagram stories, because it seems like, why would you do that? That's ridiculous. And I love that emotion. So anytime someone can make me be like, what? Really? Then
well,
I'm
and
excited.
it takes whether that's the creative space that says we're going to bike across the country and figure out how to problem solve that with 2 small children. Or it's, you know, over the top Instagram videos eating a slow motion donut that turns into what it's turned into for you. But like, and for transferable skills for you, but just for whoever's listening in general, the type of work that they're doing in their organization. What is the creative surprise? What's the thing to delight and bring the unexpected? You know, just that people need to find those places, and that's what gets them memorable. That's what makes people remember your brand, or remember that experience they had if it's in a church service, or it's the experience they have coming to eat that hamburger at your shop, or whatever. It's the delight, it's the surprise, it's the unexpected.
It's kind of interesting because there's 2 sides of the coin. People like to get the thing they were expecting. That's why we like TV shows being on at the same time, the same hour. Netflix is kind of messing with that, but they are still having shows that come out with that.
When I go to McDonald's for my Big Mac, I want the Big Mac.
You want to know what you get. Or I've been rewatching The Office lately because it's just the best. It's just so funny. But a show like that is a prime example. It's, you know what you're going to get, and they surprise you on top of that. So I'm trying to figure out what are the rules, like, of my filmmaking. Like, what's the style, the thing that people are expecting, and then how do I subvert that so that it gives that feeling of surprise. And I think a church service could probably be very similar. You don't want to go and be like, what is happening? I don't understand. It can't just be a circus of, you know.
No, chaos. There needs to be some sort of stability that people find freedom to.
And so I'll say there are rules that we play by, but not rules in like you have to do this, but just rules that make people feel comfortable, but also if it's just in these walls, if it's just exactly the package that they're expecting, it gets boring.
Right.
Or people might show up, they might visit, and it's like, yep, that was fine.
Seen that before.
Yes.
And not that we're doing it to entertain, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
not at all, but I think there's value in retelling the same story, in a way that's going to stick in someone's memory. And I think surprise is a great way to do that. And by surprise, I don't just mean like, gotcha, right?
Bad surprise.
Sometimes it's just seeing that same story from a different angle or a different perspective. And I think churches can do a really good job of that, because essentially we're telling the same story.
Yeah,
over
everybody's
and over.
got the same basic material to work
off.
off
It hasn't
of.
changed, Jesus
same
has
book.
not yet come again. But man, think of the sermons when he does. New material.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, and in C.S. Lewis's writing, he talks about a lot of this stuff to do with thinking inside the box.
Yes.
And actually, there's, in this classic way that C.S. Lewis does in his writing, in the last book, he talks about this barn. There's a barn in the story, and inside of it, when they enter, they discover there's like an entire universe.
Right.
That, like, they go into sort of a heavenly place.
Yeah.
But the line is like that the whole world, like, they're once in our world, and not in Narnia, C.S. Lewis land, but in the real human world, there was once a barn that contained the whole universe.
Right,
and it's this idea.
right,
I mean,
right.
he says it more poetically than me, but the idea of like a baby in a manger, Jesus born into a barn, like the entire universe, the creator God in a tiny, fragile little shell, that this small box can contain something far beyond it.
Yes.
That, like, within the walls of what our limits are, within that vertical shot on an Instagram screen, like, what can we create? What is possible? What is new?
I mean, that's why I love art so much. I think it's the value of art is that you can take something that's true, or even if it's a story that we've heard a million times, and present it in a new way. It's still in that barn or that box, but we feel it different. It feels bigger or new or something like that. And so
what would you say, just as a last question, what would you say to young creatives, or young, maybe not young in age, but young in trying this out? You have all kinds of people who admire what you're doing. You must get questions all the time. What would you say to encourage people starting out?
It sounds ridiculous. I'm a big advocate right now in this stage of my career of not quality over of quantity over quality.
Right.
And I don't mean necessarily over in that forget about the quality, but don't get so caught up on everything has to be perfect before you can put it out, because I was stuck in that for a really long time, and it's soul crushing to just feel like nothing you ever make is good enough, and so then you slow down what you make, and then you're not making as much, and you're always comparing it to something everyone else is making, or the people that have been doing it for 20 years is making. And so just focus on finishing as many things as possible, because it's through that process that you figure out your voice, you figure out what your unique perspective on life is, on stories, on everything, and sometimes that's stylistically, and sometimes that's philosophically, psychologically, So the more that you can complete creative works, the more you know about yourself, and the more you know about yourself, the better you can make your creative works, etc., etc. So you have to go through all of that process before you can get even close to making things that you think are great. I don't know if I've made a thing yet that I'm like, I'm so psyched on this. This is everything I thought it would be. But I've learned to really love the process of it.
And to let it go anyway. Like, to let it go into the world
and just
anyways.
Be like, it's done.
Yeah.
It's gone. That's fine. I rewatch my Instagram stories like 20 times the next day. At least. I'll just watch it over, and every time I'm like, this is what I wish I had done differently.
Right.
Or this shot that I thought was funny, it would hit a little harder if it was shorter, or if it was sooner, all that.
Yeah.
And I just kind of study it, and I don't get too upset on I wish I had done it differently, so much as next time I have a couple new things to apply to my work.
Yeah.
A few new ideas of ways of mixing up information, or new ways of letting the information come out so that there's more of a surprise, or so that it builds intrigue throughout, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just do it a lot.
Yeah.
Just do it
Just
so
do
much.
it and release it and
Yeah.
let the babies go out into the world and
Because it's not a big deal. I don't think people, like, especially when you're starting, no one's really watching.
Yeah.
And that's such a benefit.
Yeah.
I'm
The
more
blessing of
stressed now is,
obscurity.
you know, when there are like tens of thousands of people watching everything I make, I'm a little bit more concerned now that it's going to have some sort of quality than I was a year ago or 18 months ago or whatever.
Makes you more self-conscious.
Yes.
When you know people are watching.
For sure. But I still need to remind myself, just put it out. You can always make tomorrow's better.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should be stuck in that mode forever. I think eventually make the thing you want to make. Make something great. But realize that you're not going to make something great until you've made a lot of not so great things.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So if people want to find you on the interweb,
Jesse Driftwood,
Jesse
basically
Driftwood.
everywhere except Twitter, where there's a 1 on the end because the person who owns Jesse Driftwood won't
Twitter.
get back
Do you
to me.
tweet much?
I love Twitter.
Oh,
It's
do
my
you?
favorite.
Oh.
I think it's my favorite social media
Okay.
platform.
Well, how
right
about
now.
that? I never the Instagrammer who likes text over image. All right. All right.
And I think because for me, Twitter right now is at a point where I just don't care that much.
Yeah, Jesse Driftwood 1 on Twitter, and we'll find you're on YouTube as well,
Jesse
Instagram.
Driftwood,
Yeah,
Instagram.
people can find your work and see all the stuff we've just been talking about. Now people are going to want to go and look at what you do, and they'll enjoy some of those. If you don't have something alive today, it's all right. You got those
Check my
highlights on
please.
your profile. Yeah, thanks so much.
Sweet, thank you.
I just loved having the conversation with Jesse. It was great to sit down with him, sit in his studio over the summer and hear more about who he is, what he's about, and how he thinks about the digital space as a creative. So I hope you loved it too. I hope you got something out of it. You're going to, of course, want to go immediately online, go to his Instagram, and find some of these stories. If you go into his profile, you'll see some of his own favorites are saved in the top. So if you are wanting to catch up on some of what he's done in a greater body of work, you can do that right on his Instagram, Jesse Driftwood. And hey, thanks so much for listening. Next week, we have my friend Jenny Catron on the podcast. She is a leadership guru. She's all about church culture. She's worked in some of the largest churches in the U.S., and she has a lot to say about leadership and specifically self-leadership, how we as creatives or communicators need to lead ourselves first before we can be influencers or leaders of anyone else. Man, this is just going to be such an important conversation. You don't want to miss next week's episode with Jenny because she has lived through it. She's lived through some highs and lows of seeing leaders lead themselves well and lead themselves not so well. And she's come out the other side with hope for the church, with a vibrancy in her own leadership. And honestly, I think you're just going to get a lot out of the conversation that's really practical for us. So that's next week's episode. Thanks so much for listening. I love hearing from you. I love seeing you posting and commenting about where you're listening, how you're listening, and what you're getting out of these episodes. So, hey, we're still such a new podcast. Would you share this with a friend? Would you tell someone that you like this? Maybe there's something that you're thinking of, oh, so-and-so would really connect with his podcast. So you send this over to so-and-so. So-and-so needs this podcast in their life and in their ears. All right, that's all for now. Have a great week. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur. Head over to joannalafleur.com for more practical tools, interviews, and videos for creatives and communicators. We'd love to help you be the best you can be at communicating the best news in the world. Tap that subscribe button.